Hello and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the vlog, welcome back to the car, welcome back to Cornwall, welcome back to a very, very sunny day as we drive through hail. It is beautiful. It is still winter. It is still the very, very, very end of February. I think tomorrow is the last day of February, question mark. I can't remember. I cannot remember, but I've got some good news and some not so good news, depending on your perspective and position in the world. You see, I've just finished a short story, the first in an anthology of short stories, and I've chosen to write for horror. I have written for the genre of horror, and I've talked about this before, but I got to the end of it, last week, the week before, and I put it into a PDF and I sent it off to my sister, and my sister came back with, it's well written, it's truly horrific, but that's a good thing. I mean, it's horror. It's my first foray into horror. As somebody who really, really likes the genre of cyberpunk and sci-fi, I'm finding the new genre actually quite an interesting one, quite liberating actually, and it's a very fine line that you ride between writing something that is just overly descriptive, overly, I don't want to use the word pornographic, but torturous. There are words that I'm probably not choosing correctly. However, this is the first in several stories that I'll write, and then I'll put them together in an anthology, and I'll put them up on probably KDP, Kindle Desktop Publishing, and KDP allows me to self-publish, and then I can say, hey guys, there's some stories, if you want to read them, if you don't. I won't be able to read them out on YouTube, because on YouTube they have policies, and I think the stories would actually probably trip some YouTube policies and get the videos flagged as 18 plus. Probably not banned, but definitely flagged as 18 plus. So yeah, we are truly talking adult territory here. However, in the last week or so, maybe even the last month or so, a lot of articles have started appearing in my newsfeed, one of which focuses on a bit of software called ChatGPT. Now, if you don't know what ChatGPT is, it's AI assembly software. And I choose my words carefully, because it's not actually intelligent. It looks, or it pretends to be intelligent. It is a chat program, and it has 1.3 billion, that's billion with a B, that's a bravo right at the beginning, 1.3 billion texts in its database, or at least that's what it was trained on, 1.3 billion texts. So you can talk to it. You can go to the command line or chat window, and you can say, hi, how are you doing? And it'll give you a human-like response, a response that is almost indistinguishable from talking to a human. That is something that people have been trying to do for a long time, since the birth of AIML, the AI markup language. It uses a database on the back end, you ask it something, it chooses a response from the database. Very simple to understand. The training bit, or the clever bit, is the algorithm, and the algorithm learning to choose the right responses. When it chooses something that you as a human deem correct, then it weights it positively. If it says something in response to your query that is wrong, then it weights that response negatively. And through learning, through adding negative and positive weights to its own responses, it seems to learn what it should and shouldn't say to a human user. Okay? Very simple. ChatGPT is an evolution of that. It is the first true, not AI, but the media are calling it AI. It's still not truly intelligent. It doesn't love, it doesn't feel, it doesn't sing, it doesn't dream. But it does output text. And people are using those text outputs to do things like write stories. In about 5 minutes, So you can choose prompts to give to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will give you an entire written short story or an entire written novel. But there is a bit of a problem. So if you say, hey, ChatGPT, write me a story in the style of Stephen King. Stephen King. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. Set your story in Maine, make it a horror, and take all of the Colombian marching powder, baby powder you can possibly get your hands on, and then just smash out a story about monsters, but truly in the background it's aliens. Stephen King, you know, we all know Stephen King novels. What ChatGPT will do is it will go through its back end, and it will find all of the Stephen King and Stephen King adjacent works, and then it will copy and paste sentences and paragraphs from those works and assemble you a new story based on all of the words written by the human author Stephen King. You can see where this is going. You'll get a new horror story written for you by the robot in seconds, minutes maybe, and it will be in the style of Stephen King because it's really, in reality, using Stephen King's own text. It's just reassembling it into something new. Some people may argue that that's transformative work, that is taking the original work and then breaking it up and making something new. People have used that in music for the longest time. Samples exist in music, or have existed in music. People have got into trouble over using samples that they haven't had permission to use from other artists, but sampling in music has been going on since forever. However, if you do it in writing, it's called plagiarism. So what ChatGPT does is it gives you a plagiarized work. But wait, there's more. Oh, there's more. You see, when I woke up this morning in my newsfeed, there was a video on YouTube by a gentleman who claims that you can earn $6,000 a week using ChatGPT. Whoa, what? Yes. So you can go to ChatGPT, you can get it to write you a story in the style of whoever or whatever. The trouble is, it is really just a chat engine. And what ends up happening is maybe the story makes no sense. Maybe the output makes not a lot of sense. So you might have to do it a few times to get something that makes some sense. And then you'll have to spend maybe an hour editing it. You're going to need to make sure all the characters are the same. You're going to need to make sure there's some sort of plot in there. But you don't need to go too hard into it, because ultimately what you're trying to do is either sell it to a magazine who accepts short story submissions. And we say magazine, there are still some paper magazines, but these are usually online affairs. So there's a website and they'll accept short story submissions and they will pay you per word. Traditionally, what you do as an author or a writer is you go away and you spend some time, you put down a plan, you make a plan, you sketch out some ideas, and you spend maybe a month or two writing your short story. Fairly straightforward. You might even get one done over a weekend if you're very experienced. However, people are now using these to do them in minutes or even an hour, and submitting them to these websites which pay you for your short stories. There was one, there's an article earlier in the week by PC Gamer. I don't even know if they mentioned the name of the sci-fi. It was a sci-fi magazine, and the sci-fi magazine was complaining that since 2022 they've had so many AI-generated submissions, they've actually closed submissions to their magazines, short story submissions to their magazine. I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Escape Pod. I'm not entirely sure. I do like Escape Pod. But it was a sci-fi specific magazine. I'm guessing it was an online magazine. I don't think the article said. And it's become something of a problem because people who are not writers are using these as get-rich-quick schemes. They're using them to try to make money, and it's going to affect actual writers. like people who genuinely put the effort and time into making these stories. Now, there is a bit of a problem here. There's actually a couple of problems. One is that you submit your handwritten story, the story that you yourself have written, you have crafted and created, and then it gets rejected by a publisher or an agent or a magazine submission as being AI generated because it looks very similar. Your writing style just happens to be very similar to an AI output. So you might find it's very tricky to get your writing seen. And that has happened. That has already happened in art competitions where people have submitted AI generated art. Art competitions are now saying, well, we don't want AI generated art. You have to be an artist. And the people whose genuine, hard created, handmade art looks very similar to what an AI will put out, are now being shut out of the field because people are false flagging them. They're being falsely flagged as AI generated. The same thing will happen with short stories and other media. So it's a bit of a problem, and it's a bit of a problem we haven't had to deal with before. The other thing is that if you submit your handwritten story to a publisher already receives hundreds, if not thousands, of submissions every day. They have a slush room where everything goes, and typically what will happen is they'll just bin half of them. Maybe 90% of everything that comes to the publisher is just got rid of. Your best way of getting your story published is actually to go through an agent, 100%, or just self-publish. The issue there is that so many people are now using AI tools to generate stories that the actual writers, the real writers, are being frozen out of the market. So their works are just not being seen because the people who have to go through and vet these things, well, they're seeing so many AI submissions, it's just swamping the system. So writers are going to have a hard time. Yeah, I don't know where this is going to go because the genie is now out of the bottle, and there are forks or custom versions of these AI chat programs. In America, they use one called Harvey. Harvey is one that creates legal documents. So legal documents take time to write. They are created on precedent, so they are based on things that have already come before them. In America, there isn't such thing as a Public Data Protection Act, so they don't have the same protection for public data in America than they do in Europe. In Europe, you can't just put everyone's personal documents into a database. It's actually illegal. It's straight up illegal. But in America, those checks and rules don't actually exist, so you can throw them in, and legal companies are using them now to draft legal documents much faster. So the writing part is done by the AI, and then all you do is you have to read it, check for hallucinations, and hallucinations are where the AI assembles the text. It can assemble it in such a way that it accidentally adds meaning where meaning was not intended. So it might accidentally add something to a sentence where you don't want meaning. Road is still torn up there. So yeah, it's already being used in industry. I saw another one which is used to annotate work. So if you have data, you can use an AI tool to annotate data. The problem in industry is those tools are going to cost people jobs. They're going to make your work a lot faster and a lot easier, but if you have 30 people in a room writing legal documents and you have a limited caseload, why do you need 30 people when 5 people can get through the caseload? Yeah, and I've already seen it. I've actually already seen departments become redundant because of AI tools in several businesses. In fact, people have been, like departments have been slimlined down, so there's only a few people left to monitor the AI and make sure it's actually doing what they need it to do. So AI tools affecting writing and affecting industry, and it's one of those things that's come out in the last, I would say, come to prominence in the last year or so, but has been around for a while with AI/ML, the AI markup language. But ChatGPT is the one that everyone knows. Everyone knows the name of. China is going to make its own because they don't want an American system working within the country because of, well, American propaganda. Britain wants its own because Britain doesn't want to be left behind. So all the countries, all the governments want these AI programs, AI algorithms, and huge database backends. So it's kind of a curious one. I don't know where it's going to lead us, and I don't know how it's going to affect your chances of being a writer or an author in future. I think as far as publishers go, if publishers started accepting AI written works, then it doesn't make any sense, because a publisher could literally go to one of these chat programs and just generate their own AI generated work. They don't need people out in the world to do that for them. It wouldn't make any sense. So it wouldn't make any sense to admit AI generated submissions, and if you did submit something generated by AI and it was accepted, if they then found out that you hadn't written it and it was all plagiarized, you would stand to lose quite a lot of money and or go to court for plagiarization by using these things. We haven't got there yet. We don't know. If you go through an agent is going to have a back and forth with you to do with editing, and they are going to be looking at work very closely. Again, if you approach an agent with AI generated work, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But then it depends. I mean, what are you paying for if you are paying for your agent? Typically an agent will take a percentage of the value of your work. So that's how that goes. And they are not going to be wanting to get embroiled in anything to do with AI. So agents and publishers are probably fairly safe bets. But when it comes to self-publishing on places like KDP, there's another self-publishing place that is fairly big, and the name escapes me as I'm driving my car through the Cornish lanes. You'll have to forgive me, but there are other self-publishing sites. As far as Amazon goes, with KDP, Kindle Desktop Publishing, there were something like 300 AI-generated submissions on their site. I think it was last month. Amazon hasn't really taken a stance on AI generated works. I think as far as Amazon's concerned, there's a lot of stuff on Kindle that is self-published. Some of it's good, some of it's awful. Some of it's awful but sells. If you know a name such as Chuck Tingle, you'll know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to Amazon itself, they are probably holding fire on trying to detect and stop AI-generated works. When it comes to other places, well, I don't know, because KDP is the one that I do know. And it is going to make it no more difficult to get your work seen. There's already millions, maybe billions of works on Amazon self-published. When it comes to it, you are the one that needs to advertise your work, and you are the one that needs to make people know that it's out there. You need to become a personality. You need to become the author that people go to. And in order to do that, yeah, you need to advertise. You can't just rely on the system to choose your work for you and get you in front of readers. Yeah, so that's going to be an issue. is it one that, I mean, we can't put the genie back in the bottle. The genie is out. We already know how to do it. There are other systems that are also going to have issues. I think when it comes to places like graphic design, that was the one I was trying to think of. Graphic designers might need to look and see what's going on, might need to test the winds of change, because I can see graphic design in the future being taken over by AI, and that's going to be a bit of an issue for people who rely on graphic design as a career path. So why would you need to employ an entire department to generate logos or generate ideas for images when you can just put some text into an AI image generator and have something spat out the other end? I have a feeling that in industry it's going to be a bit more of a problem. It's going to be a bit more of a problem because industry really likes money. Industry really likes getting rid of staff because staff wages are expensive, and if you can replace those staff with AI, then let's do it. So anywhere where you can write text, document crafting, letter writing, anything like that, that's an area that's going to be affected by AI. Image generation and image creation is also going to be affected by AI, more so the image generation and creation rather than editing. But certainly those are going to be affected. It's not perfect at the moment. Neither the writing side or the image generation side are perfect, but people are still working on them. This is the first generation of true assembly AI, if you will. The other area that's going to be a bit of a problem is education. Now, education is already seeing this come to the forefront, where people are using things like ChatGPT to do their homework for them. They're using ChatGPT to do coursework for them, and they're using ChatGPT to do things like their doctoral thesis for them. They are using AI to effectively cheat at their masters, cheat at their higher education, because it's easier to get a machine to write things for you than it is to write them yourself. And if all you're doing is then editing, well, I mean, then all you're doing is editing. Let's just cut through here without running anyone over. Yeah, a little light editing to make sure that you're making some sort of sense. And there are plagiarization tools that you can use to make sure that, so universities already use plagiarization tools to detect plagiarization, where you've copied and pasted somebody else's work and passed it off as your own. That's plagiarizing. They have softwares that will go through the text and see if that is what you've done. There are counter plagiarization softwares that will go through your written text and change just enough words to fool the plagiarization softwares. So it's attack and response essentially in software format. So a lot of speed bumps. But those haven't had to deal with AI submissions before. And AI submissions, they are obvious. Like, if you've ever read an AI generated story, it's obvious. If you've ever seen an AI generated document, it's kind of obvious. Or an AI generated thesis, again, it's fairly obvious. But given time and given enough editing, it's going to be harder to spot. And I think schools, not so much, but certainly colleges and universities are going to want to invest in tools to detect AI-generated work. And I think if there's a battle line to be drawn, it's going to be within those universities, within those halls of education, because nobody wants somebody to go through, get a doctorate, and then to end up in the local newspaper saying, hey, I was just awarded a doctorate and I did no work whatsoever because it was all done thanks to my pal ChatGPT. That was going so well, and then I sort of spooned it up. I was trying to navigate the junction. That's my excuse. Also, fun fact, there used to be Pullman cars parked along that bit of railway line. The cream and brown ones, but they were sort of just left to rot, really. It was a shame. It was a shame. So, to the questions, am I going to carry on writing? The answer is yes, of course I am. I'm going to carry on writing. Why would I not? I do enjoy it. Am I going to craft stories by hand? Am I going to make the stories full of creeping horror, creeping dread? Am I going to write stories that are going to make you upset? Maybe even a little sad, but thoughtful? Yeah, maybe. Am I going to make stories that make you laugh? Make you happy? Yeah. Right before the horror starts, of course. I mean, we've got to have a little laugh. See, the way I write is very much influenced by film and Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. In the infamous ear scene, I can't remember which color it was, but one of the guys is there, and he's singing away to "Stuck in the Middle with You," and there's a little song and there's a little dance, and that's deliberate. That's to get the audience on the bad guy's side, because the audience is doing a little song, a little dance as well, and then he goes and cuts a policeman's ear off, and it's truly horrific. If you didn't have the song and the dance first, if you didn't get the audience on your side, it would just be an act of just a nasty act. But when it comes to horror, you need to very, very, very carefully tailor and craft the words, very carefully tailor and craft your story, because you need the audience to feel certain things at certain times. You need your readers to feel certain things at certain times. And I don't think an AI is going to be able to do that. It might accidentally do that, but it's not going to do that by choice, because AI is not intelligent. It's just programmed. It just runs programmed. Good. Well, we are now once again in Penzance. I think there's as much as we can talk about that subject. It is something that has come to the forefront, certainly in the most recent weeks, but is definitely been there for a while. Worrying, yeah, certainly. Worrying if you're a writer, worrying if you just write documents at work, worrying if you have a job. Everyone's trying to use these AI tools to replace workers, essentially. And the other thing that I read earlier in the week is that 40% of all household chores will be done by robots, or have at least one robot that can do them by 2025. That means there's something in the kitchen that can cook your dinner. Like, you put the ingredients into it and it'll chop them up and cook them for you. We already have Roomba, we have robots. I love Roomba. I mean, I have a robot that straight up vacuums my floor. Would I get rid of him? No, I love robots. Which makes me sort of a little bit, oh, hang on a sec, we got the beps. There we go. Yeah, it makes me in two minds about AI. On one hand, I kind of like the idea of AI and AI/ML. On the other hand, I think it's going to be a while before we settle on how it should actually be used, and whether there needs to be new laws or new rules about AI-generated media and works. It won't be too long before things like the Unreal Engine gets so good that you could use an AI to literally generate a television show from start to finish, from inception to ending, the whole thing there, looking like human actors, talking like human actors, but the whole thing is generated inside a computer. That, I think, is the ultimate destination. Now, whether we all still have jobs by then, I don't know. There was also talk of a robot tax, a tax on AI and robots that would be paid to humans to give you a basic wage. Now you could then top that up by getting a job, I don't know, as a cleaner or as a cook or something. But some of your, or at least a lot of your wage needs would be taken up by the robot tax. But that hasn't come about yet. I don't think we're quite there. Interesting though, an interesting subject, an interesting topic. If you don't know about ChatGPT, I would suggest looking it up because yeah, an interesting field. Anyway, thank you once again for watching. Thank you for everyone who's donated using Ko-fi. There is a link at the top of the YouTube page. There's a link in the video description. There's also a link on the website. If you want to donate, like $3, like a one-off $3 or whatever, like literally buy me a coffee, then you can. It all goes to electricity. If you don't want to do that, then you don't have to. Just your watch time, maybe just a like on the video is good enough. And for everyone who has subscribed with a reoccurring subscription on Ko-fi, do obviously just check, make sure you still can afford it and still are okay to do it. Don't forget about it is my thing. But yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And I tell you what, I'll catch you next time.